Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm very excited because I'm going to show you my picks for a VR to Kasia from the tarot map, and it's all about the most artistic tarot decks for collectors. Let's do this. So just to give a short explanation, today we're going to have a look at 10 tarot decks. So there's not going to be any oracle deck, and it's only 10 because I didn't want to put too many tarot decks out there, but these are what I really consider, how should I say this, because one thing is saying beautiful and one thing is saying artistic. Artistic to me is not necessarily always beautiful to me. Something that is beautiful is very subjective. I can like something that is very minimal and not necessarily artistic. So let's just say that artistic to me is when we are looking at something, a work of art, and we can gather an insight into the soul of the artist that created, in this case, these specific decks. And there's more than 10 because I do have quite a vast collection. So I obviously have more than 10 decks that I consider to be artistic for tarot collectors. However, I just wanted to keep it short. Let's start with this one because it's a deck that I honestly never see around. And yes, indeed, it is a collectible item that has been out of print for a long time. And I'm talking about the Tarot by Oreste Zevola. Now, this is by Grimaud, which is a French publishing company, but Oreste Zevola was an Italian artist. So obviously when we're talking about an artist, whether it could be, for example, a painter, it could be an illustrator, but in any case, when they realize a deck because they want to produce something, they study tarot and they want to make their own rendition of a tarot deck, but they are primarily artists, that is definitely something that I have absolutely no problem in calling artistic. So this deck, and let me just zoom in because we want to see the cards a bit better, obviously. This is a very unusual deck, as you can see, not just because of the images on the cards, which are very unusual, very quirky, I would say very limited color palettes and the choices of colors. But very striking, very beautiful. The colors are saturated, and thanks to these black borders, obviously we find that the contrast is even stronger. But it is also weird or strange or unusual because of the shape. Obviously, we can see how it is much longer than a standard tarot size, and it is slightly narrower. It is not one of those decks that I would recommend to read with because honestly, apart from the fact that it is rather peepish when it comes to the minors, I actually think that this is one of the decks that should be conserved. I rarely show this deck, and as a matter of fact, I think that the last time that I actually opened the box was when I was showing it for a video. So I consider it to be one of my collectible items. And it's not, as I said, not just because, yes, indeed, it has been out of print for a while, but it's also because I don't think that anyone has ever released something like this, and probably never will ever again. Oreste Zevola, the artist himself, has passed away. And I'm not entirely sure, but I think Grimaud is not in business anymore, or perhaps they still are, but they're not releasing, well, certainly not releasing this deck any longer. So which is ironic because you would think that generally speaking, an artistic deck, so a deck that has been produced, created by an artist, will be independently produced and released. But actually, no. At least Grimaud is or was, not sure whether they're still in business, but it's definitely a mass market kind of publishing company. And that makes it even more interesting because originally there may have been a diffusion of this deck around, but indeed it's not really seen around anymore. Another one of my favorite decks that has also been created by a fantastic artist, Sam Guai, is the Blood Moon Tarot. This is the deluxe edition. I have heard so many rumors about this deck going to be reprinted. No, going mass market. No, going to be reprinted but indie. There's going to be another version. It's going to be redone. There's going to be a tweaking on the brightness of the card and the images. No, there's not going to be a tweaking. It's going to be exactly the same. I literally have heard pretty much everything you can hear when it comes to gossip related to a tarot deck. I have absolutely no idea. What I do know, because I actually subscribe to Sam's newsletter, they did confirm that they're actually working on an oracle deck. But then again, I also subscribe to so many other newsletters by creators. And I have to say that sometimes the process of creating a deck takes ages. It takes years and years and years. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see an oracle deck that will probably go with the Blood Moon Tarot anytime soon. Or maybe we will. I have absolutely no idea. This deck, though, is absolutely fantastic. This is the stuff dreams are made of. And I always refer to this deck as my Guillermo del Toro deck, in the sense that I feel like it does have a really strong connection when it comes to the images to one of Guillermo del Toro's movies titled Pan's Labyrinth. And, you know, there's so many cards that remind me of that. That it is incredibly beautiful. And that is not one of the reasons why I think it's beautiful. So it could or couldn't be, you know, resonating with you and reminding you of that movie. Even if it doesn't, it stands to reason to say that this deck is artistic, because it is absolutely gorgeous. And ironically, I actually do read with this deck, although I'm being extremely careful when I handle the deck. But it is an excellent readout, which is not something that I would say for all of the artistic decks that I've got in my collection. Another deck in my collection that has been indeed created by an artist is the Major Arcana by Leonora Carrington. Leonora Carrington was really into the occult. I would say that together with other painters and artists from the same period of time, they really loved the studying the occult, and many of them were creating within that same kind of environment and vibes. When Leonora actually produced this deck, so this is Major Arcanas only, so obviously it's not a full deck. But it doesn't matter, because this is not a deck that I would actually use for readings. This is definitely a deck that I consider an artistic production, and as such, this is indeed a collectible item for me. I, however, know that this deck has been out of print for many years, and it was fetching a lot of money on your various Facebook groups or eBay or Etsy even. And then Folger Press, which is the publishing company from the UK that was in touch with Leonora Carrington's estate and decided to republish this deck, has actually put this deck on sale for, I believe it was just after Christmas. I don't think that it's still on sale, and I'm not entirely sure whether this deck is still available or not. Ironically, though, when I got it, it was the first reprint after so many years of being out of print. And I am stoked that I was able to get a copy, because it used to sell for like $500, and now I think I got it for 130 Australian, including shipping from the UK to Sydney. So I was really, really happy to be able to have this deck in my collection, because it is absolutely amazing. I mean, this is, as I often say when I talk about an artistic production, not everyone likes them, of course. I mean, if this is not your jam, you probably don't think that this is beautiful. But it doesn't matter, because this is still artistic to me, and that's why I would recommend this if you are a serious tarot and oracle decks collector, and you want to have some staple decks in your collection. especially given the fact that this one it might still be available at Folger Press, I would definitely recommend you reach for this deck because it's absolutely stunning, as you can see. And another deck that I believe is actually very easy to source because it is an indie deck. However, it is currently still in print, although it might not be the first edition, it might be the second or the third, I don't actually know. But it is still in print. It is again printed in the UK, and it is the product of a collective of artists called Three Trees Tarot. And this is the Oreste and Thorn tarot deck. Now, this one is the edition from 2021. I believe, though, that they probably either they come out with a new edition every year or they still have stock from a previous year's edition. In any case, this is still available. And as such, I believe that you can also get the other deck that has been produced, which is themed around dragons. I believe it's called Ash and Ember. I don't remember, but in any case, it is based on dragons, and I have that deck as well. And there's also a really beautiful oracle deck, and possibly another deck. And I don't, to be honest with you, when I think about this collective and these artists, I always refer to the Oreste and Thorn because it was probably also the very first one that they produced, and this one is indeed a work of art for me. And again, I understand that not everyone may like it, especially when we're talking about a tarot deck for readings. But in this case, I will feel like saying that this is an excellent reader as well. So it's not just an incredibly beautiful artistic deck created by artists, but it's also a really good tarot deck when it comes to readings. And so again, if you are serious about your collection and you're looking for ideas and inspiration, I would definitely recommend this deck because even though, as I said, it is an independently produced deck, you can still buy it. It is still available. And so I could be wrong, but I believe that more or less twice a year they go on sale, even though the last sale may have been just a month ago, so it's probably not going to go on sale for another 6 months or something like that. Look at this star card, how beautiful this star card is. So you can still find it. It's still affordable in price, especially if you do happen to catch it in a sale. And it's just absolutely wonderful. It is animal based, so obviously when it comes to how do we relate to a deck, this deck may come across as something of a niche, even though I would have to say that nowadays animal-based decks are not a niche any longer. There are so many animal-based decks out there that, it's become just as a common item as a people-based deck. But there's nothing common. There's nothing common about this deck because honestly, the images, as you can see, they're absolutely adorable. They're really spectacular. And I would definitely recommend this deck again, as I was saying, if you are serious and want to have a certain kind of level of, let's say, artist-produced decks in your collection, this is one of them. And I just wanted to show you that most of the time you would think of a collectible item or an artistic tarot deck for collectors as to be out of print, hard to find, very expensive, but that is not always the case. Another deck that is definitely being realized by an artist, and it's another deck that was or used to be out of print and it has been for a number of years, again selling for a lot of money on these swap places like on Facebook or eBay, and then has been picked up and reprinted, is the Tyldwick Tarot. I unfortunately only have the second edition. I know that the first edition is a lot better than the second one when it comes to the clarity of the images, let's say. But I am stoked to have this anyway because it is a fantastic deck. It really is very artistic. And I would have to say you can definitely try and read with this deck, but I'm not entirely sure that is one of those decks that I actually use for a specific type of reading. I don't really reach out for this deck. I do admire it. I love it. It's one of the most safe decks in my collection. I really do not see myself rehoming this deck unless I do get a hold of a first edition. And in that case, I might think about letting this one go. But that will be the only case in which I will rehome this one. It is amazing, very unique. You will probably not see any other deck like this one ever again, unless someone really wants to copy the deck or somehow channel the same kind of vibes. And again, it's a very specific deck, and again, a very niche deck, because it is related to elements of interior design and architecture, and it doesn't have any human element, which makes it, on the one hand, maybe a peepish deck, or people may see this deck as peepish, but I honestly see that instead there is a very strong effort to illustrate each and every card. And so I really, really appreciate the effort of the artist that I can definitely see reflected in this card. Again, really, really beautiful. It is now, again, my apologies. I actually should have checked about all of these decks before filming, but it is 40 degrees today. And honestly, I am sweating just by talking, even though the aircon is on. And so just doing research, I just couldn't do it. In any case, this deck, as I said, has been out of print for many years. Then it's been reprinted by the artist's brother, because the artist unfortunately has passed away in 2018, Neil Lovell. So Neil's brother has picked this deck back up and reprinted it. And I believe the new edition is called the 10th year anniversary edition. I am not entirely sure that that deck is still available, but in any case, you see, never despair when you want a deck that is out of print, because I found that in so many years of collecting, I found that more often than not, artists will actually reprint their decks, especially if there's a lot of demand and it's not an obscure deck. So another deck that I really wanted to be in this video, because you guys will know, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, how much I love Anna Torian's work. Anna Torian's, her work for me is that of an artist. There's no two ways around that. I really, really love everything she's done. Actually, one of you, so very kind, reached out to me a few weeks ago and sent me a couple of prints from Anna's work, and I am absolutely over the moon because they're really, really gorgeous. And so I always look with a keen eye to Anna's work and Anna's production of tarot decks. We know, for example, she is the illustrator of the Brimstone and Earthflesh Tarot, which is going to be released mass market sometime. We kind of teased about this, but we don't necessarily know of any kind of deadline. So we will see it mass market one day. We don't know when. I have the Brimstone and Earthflesh in the indie edition, and I'm very proud of having that. I have the French edition, which has been illustrated again by Anna Torian, but made by Claire Duval, which is Le Tarot Arthurien, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I have this one, which is the Tarot of Echoes. I have the Oracle of Echoes. I know that I actually have bought, but this will be in a different video, the Pathwork Oracle, and I cannot wait to film the unboxing video because I can't wait to have a look at the images as well. So I have the Tarot of the Abyss. I used to have the Claire de Lune Lenormand. I don't have it anymore because I think that Lenormand, you really have to learn really well how to read with it before you can actually buy different types of Lenormand. But in any case, that would definitely be, you know, one day I would definitely buy that one as well. And I know that there's another tarot deck that is very unusual for her, let's say, production, because it doesn't reflect her, the way in which she realizes these works of art, which is called, I believe, the Tarot. It might be the Hidden Waters, I'm not entirely sure. And it looks pretty much like a Rorschach kind of test. So if you've seen that one, you will know which one I'm talking about, but it's very unusual for her. I don't have that one, but I'm actually kind of curious. Look at how beautiful this Six of Pentacles is. It's one of the most beautiful cards of this deck. So I am very excited, and I always say, this one, by the way, the Tarot Backers is also confirmed to be coming out mass market. Again, we don't know much, to be honest, about this deck. Really, really beautiful. The power of this artwork is very tangible for me. And so I will always recommend anything by Anatolian that has been illustrated by Anatolian as an artistic deck for a tarot and oracle deck collector. And the next deck is another deck that has been released by an artist. It's a German, I believe. Could be Germanic as in origin. I don't know whether they're Austrian or German or Swiss. But in any case, it's the Margarete Petersen Tarot. This deck is the specific 20th edition. Yeah, 20th anniversary edition with the maroon kind of borders. If you know this deck and you have a version with kind of gray, yellow, gray, greenish kind of color for the borders, you have the standard edition. I've actually splurged on this edition. This is actually published by AGM, which is a mass market publisher. So this deck is actually not expensive. Personally, I think I paid around $50 Australian, but I believe that it can be found for more or less that price. But it is a very artistic deck. It is, I would say, also a lot more abstract than I would prefer. I am going back and forth between whether I like abstract art or not. I will have to say that some type of abstract art, like if we can call it abstract, but for example, Jackson Pollock is one of my favorite painters of all time. But I don't know whether we can call that abstract. It certainly doesn't have recognizable shapes. So if we call that kind of style as abstract, then definitely is. This one is a bit of a we have both recognizable and unrecognizable shapes. For example, here we can see a Hindu deity, and I believe this was from one of the temples in Angkor Wat, but I could be wrong. There's a dragon here and a feather. So as you can tell, there's recognizable elements in the cards together with more abstract kind of elements. And I really like this. The creative process behind this deck is actually very interesting. So it is one of those decks that I would not entirely recommend for reading purposes, because again, you would have to know your RWS system, or what if it's not RWS? What if it's a thought-inspired deck? So there's a number of reasons why I honestly don't read with a deck such as this one, but I will always keep it because it's absolutely beautiful. And it is one of those decks that I, again, recommend to a tarot and oracle deck collector that wants to have something seriously artistic in their collection, because of the fact that it has been created by an artist, and it shows. You can definitely feel the vibes coming out of the cards in each and every one of them, whether they are more abstract or it's easier to tell what the images are portraying. It doesn't really matter. The vibes of the deck itself are very strong, and they're very beautiful, somehow also very cosmic because of the fact that they are a little bit abstract. But look at the moon card, for example. It is very symbolic as well. So really, really recommend this deck. It is very beautiful. When it comes to the production value, there's a lot of people complaining that this deck is very thin, or at least it feels very thin. Personally, I feel that it is because it's slightly larger than your usual format for a tarot deck. But I don't dislike it. I honestly don't feel like I'm worried about damaging this deck. And again, it is a mass market deck. And for what I know, it is still in print, so it's not too difficult to get it. So the next deck, I will have to explain that I personally still believe that it has been produced by what I would call an artist. because it is the Mio Im's Tarot from South New York. So Mio Im is a tattoo artist. She's from South Korea. For a number of reasons, she portrays artwork on tattoos all around the world. It is because in South Korea, in order to be a tattoo artist, you need to hold a medical license. So obviously, and I don't think she does, but in any case, she does travel a lot. And you will be able to see her, for example, if you go to her website, you will be able to see where she's performing tattoos at the moment. I'm not entirely sure because I've only checked her website a few times and I don't know whether that is still the case, but I do know that there's a number of tattoo artists that they just advertise on their Instagram page, for example, that they're going to be spending some time in Sydney or in Hong Kong or in Los Angeles, etc. And so they're taking bookings. Mio Im's Tarot is a tarot deck that is independently produced, and let me just be completely blunt, is a rather expensive deck. It is a rather expensive deck. However, this is the full tarot deck. It's got 78 cards. There's also a majors only deck that you might be interested in, and obviously that one is more affordable, but I wouldn't say that it's cheap at all. I, however, think that I would have spent all the money that this deck was advertised for and even more, because I absolutely love it. It is very artistic to me. And as I said, this is the type of art that I recognize as such. Tattoo artists are artists to me, just as much as photographers are artists to me. Are all tattoo artists? Maybe not. It depends on the level of experience and depends on their work. Are all photographers artists? Also, maybe not. Commercial photographers, when they're doing their job, they're not necessarily artistic. Fine art photography is for the art's sake. So there's a conversation that we may have if you want, but notwithstanding that recognition of being an artist, yes or no, I really look at this as an artistic product. This deck, the images, even when we're looking at a peepish kind of minor, such as this one, which is the Eight of Wands, this is still artistic to me. I know that this deck is not for everyone. I know that this deck is at times very thought-provoking and at times even triggering, and I am aware of that. However, there's a number of things that I absolutely love about this deck that really give me a fantastic experience. And I actually do use this deck for readings, mostly for myself, because I would never recommend this deck for a reading for a client unless it is specifically requested. And even when it will be specifically requested, I would definitely make sure that the person requesting it is aware of all of the triggering images that there are on the cards, because I don't want anyone to have any kind of surprises when I'm using a deck for their own personal readings. Can you imagine? So in this case, I would definitely ask if they know, if they're familiar with the deck. And if they are, and they are sure 100% that I would use it, but most of the time I use it for personal readings. And this is an incredible reader. Let me tell you that this is an incredible reader. Many of these cards give you the possibility to read the meaning in such a deep way that I cannot find in other decks. And it's also an artistic deck. And because I was saying with the Mio Im that I believe that a tattoo artist can be seen as an artist, and also I mentioned that photographers, in my opinion, can be seen as artists, the next deck that I'm going to propose to you is the Circle of Doors Tarot, which is indeed obtained with a technique of stacking negatives of a photo and printing them all together in such a way that it looks almost as if we were looking through a glass with several different photos, one after the other. So it is the Circle of Doors Tarot. This is an incredible deck. I know that it comes also from the idea of this installation that has been presented. I think it was 2020, but I could be wrong. I don't remember which year, but it's not 20 years ago. It's mostly, let's say, a few years ago. And this was an installation that was presented at Burning Man. to their festival, yearly festival. And it was incredibly interesting because there was indeed a circle of doors. So you could enter, choose the door to enter this circle. And thanks to the difference between the doors, you would experience something completely different. I really love this concept. It is incredibly interesting, but also very eloquent in the sense that obviously we can have a lot of different interpretation when it comes to the different doors. When it comes to the deck itself, it is a very beautiful product. It is an independently produced deck, so obviously it costs a bit more than your usual mass market. But again, I do believe that it's more than worth it because you would definitely get something that it is artistic in its nature. And whether you're an admirer of photography or not, or whether you know what the process of stacking the negatives is in order to produce these images, you can still appreciate the value and the effort that goes beyond the production of this. And so personally, knowing about photography, knowing what the procedure is, knowing actually, I was used to do that. These days with digital photography, you can it's much easier to obtain this effect. Think about double exposure or triple exposure, for example. There's a lot of apps even on an iPhone that let you do something like this. So it's not difficult at all. It is indeed very beautiful. And I absolutely love the tint. It does show some kind of a cyanotype tint to the cards. It's not necessarily a black and white. So I really appreciate everything that goes behind the production of this deck. The cardstock is a very soft kind of linen, which is very nice. It is slightly bigger than your standard tarot size, which means that for me is a bit of a problem in shuffling, but that's fine. It's my problem, not the deck's problem. And it is obviously, it's an excellent reader. I would say it is indeed an excellent reader as well. Again, apologies, but these days it is what it is. I'm actually still mourning. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I haven't been wearing any rings apart from my wedding rings, nor any decoration on my nails because I'm still mourning the passing of my cat. So not that that is any kind of justification, but this morning I went to the post office and I had to ship out some decks, and I made at least 5 or 6 mistakes. It is what it is. These days are just like that. In any case, this one, highly recommended if you want an artistic deck in your collection. And last but not least, a deck that is a collage deck, because we've come to this, we'll build up to this. So I said, and a tattoo artist can be seen as an artist, a photographer can be seen as an artist. And I believe that when it comes to collage deck, I would say though that I would actually accept arguments to the contrary. If you come to me and say, I actually don't think that a collage deck can be seen as artistic, I would definitely hear you out. Personally, I think that there are ways to make that into an artistic product. And this is definitely the case of the Scarab and Dahlia Tarot, which has been, so the tarot deck is by Joanna Callaghan Waldo, but it has been designed by Octavia Leichhardt Waldo. And this is a very recent deck. As a matter of fact, I still think that, again, it is an independently produced deck, and I'm pretty sure that it's still in print, and then you can still get it. I bought mine from an Etsy shop. And so I have to say though that it is not cheap, especially if you live in Australia. The shipping costs for this deck were astronomical, to the point that I had to have it shipped to my parcel collect service in Portland, Oregon, because otherwise it would have been just too much. And this is your typical, not typical, how should I say this? The technique is typical. This is a collage deck. There's either analog collages or digital collages, what happens is that when we talk about collages, there's a lot at play, because you might not see this by looking at these images, but I can assure you 1000% that there's a lot of so-called artists out there that think that they can do a collage deck, and their process is very sloppy. There's a lot of whites, for example, around the images that have been cut out. And that shows that when we look at this one, there's a lot of mastering the skill of collaging. So I actually appreciate that. But let me tell you, it's not easy. So if you've ever been working with Photoshop, you will notice it's not easy. Nowadays, it's becoming easier and easier, especially with some softwares. For example, I use a lot of Canva, and Canva has a tool that removes the background, which is absolutely amazing, and it's doing a fantastic job. But you can imagine that when we're looking at really, really small details, it's actually not that easy. And more often than not, if you do that, you will find yourself having to fine tune the results and go over them over and over again until you're actually happy with them, because the first pass will definitely not be satisfying. What I feel is that this is an actually beautiful deck. So whether it comes to being artistic, as I said, because it is a collage deck, I will hear you out. If you think that it's not, I will definitely not disagree with you. I think it will go for a very interesting conversation, and we can probably agree to disagree on a couple of points. But when it comes to the beauty of this deck, I don't think there's anyone saying to the contrary. This is an incredible, beautiful deck. And it's not that easy for a collage deck to actually be beautiful. So I think about many collage decks that I've had and then I passed on because I just didn't vibe with them. This one has absolutely none of those problems. It is incredibly stunning. So thank you for staying with me in this journey into what I consider to be artistic decks. But I've been very interested to know which ones do you consider artistic or not. And also if you have any tarot deck in specific to add to this collection, let me know in the comments below, because as you know, I'm always on the lookout for other decks. For now, have a great day.